This is John Monroe, Director of Custom Editorial at Washington Technology. I want to welcome you to the webcast today, Modernizing the Supply Chain. This event is brought to you by Washington Technology and sponsored by CDWG. For systems integrators and solution providers, the supply chain is a critical component of the business. These days, many firms are looking to modernize their supply chain operations, both to improve its efficiency and its effectiveness. And of course, security is a critical concern, especially for any company doing business with federal agencies. So that's what we'll be talking about today, and we are fortunate to have two experts with us. I'd like to introduce them now. First is Scotty Miller. Scotty is Vice President for Supply Chain Management at General Dynamics Mission Systems. He directs procurement activities for all companies within the Information Systems and Technology Business Group at General Dynamics. His team is responsible for the subcontract management and procurement of all materials, services, and support across the company. Scotty has developed supply chain management in concert with the business to be a strategic advantage for General Dynamics. And along the way, he's earned a reputation for developing strong customer and partner relationships within the U.S. military, Homeland Security, and government communities. He's been with General Dynamics since 1982. Next is Byron Holden. Byron is Vice President for Procurement at CDWG. He's responsible for the strategy and development of the procurement organization that manages the acquisition of more than 100,000 products and services coming from 500-plus suppliers. In addition to managing the flow of inventory, his team is responsible for driving operational process improvements across the organization, overseeing supplier performance management, and other key functions. Byron joined CDW in 1994. So here's how this webcast will work. I'll begin by asking Scotty and Byron to each take a few minutes to talk about the work they do around supply chain management and related issues. Then we'll move into a roundtable discussion, focusing on such topics as supply chain modernization, security, and business operations. And then after that, we'll take your questions. But now, before we get started, I'd like to cover just a few housekeeping items. First, like I said, we will be taking questions, so if you'd like to submit a question, just look for the question field, which you'll find to the left of the slide window. Type your question in there and hit submit. Now, you can enter a question at any time, but like I said, we'll field those questions towards the end of the webcast. Let's see, if you have any technical difficulties during the session, look for the yellow question mark icon below the slide window. Click there, and you'll receive technical assistance. And finally, I want to let you know that in the next day or two, we'll email you a link to an archived version of the session, so you can view it again or share it with a colleague. And with that, I'd like to hand things over to Scotty Miller. Scotty?
Thanks, John. I'll just take a few minutes, as John said, and first thank Byron Holden at CDWG and John for the opportunity here today. I'll give you a little background on General Dynamics Mission Systems. We're a pretty established global company focused on secure communications and systems, our command and control systems, imagery, sensor, and cyber products. We also offer 4G LTE solutions in the tactical environment for first responders, C4ISR and cyber product technologies, global imaging, several maritime and strategic systems for the Navy, tactical radio comms for our military personnel, other public safety communications, SATCOM solutions and products, supporting the satellite networking business, secure space systems, and of course the soldiers network. Just think of that as the Army's tactical communications network, similar to what we use in the commercial world. Our primary customers are DoD, federal agencies, and a few commercial. General Dynamics Mission Systems employs just over 13,000 employees, and we're based in Virginia. And again, like I say, a very large global footprint. My personal experience has primarily been on the business side. I've spent 30 years with General Dynamics, actually longer than that now. And I've been in the supply chain organization for about 3 years. Prior to that, I was Vice President for Business Development in Mission Systems, and then prior to that I ran various different businesses and P&Ls within the company. Came to the company out of college when it was Motorola, prior to the General Dynamics acquisition, and just been a good 30 years with the company. The organization I lead, we have 384 supply chain professionals spread out all over the world, and great team, organized now by commodities and location. And then finally, what I'm going to cover today will be some of the things that characterize the modern supply chain organization, how we move to a commodity-based procurement organization, and the importance of supporting the front end of the business in terms of winning new business for the corporation, how supply chain can really drive that. So with that, I'll turn it back over to John.
Okay, great. Thank you, Scotty. And so now I'd like to bring in Byron Holden. Byron?
Thank you, John. Again, my name is Byron Holden. I'm the Vice President of Procurement for CDW, which covers our commercial and public sector business. I've been here with CDW for 20 years in various roles within the supply chain. There were 400 coworkers at CDW when I joined, and today we have 8,700 strong. We became a public company in 1993, went private in 2007, and back to a public company in 2013. So different experiences as a public and private company, and there's different benchmarks that you use in those scenarios. We have acquired a handful of companies during my tenure, 2 in North America and 1 recently headquartered in London. I have worked on cross-functional teams to integrate and onboard those businesses, which has provided insight into various business models and corporate cultures. My team and I are currently challenged with scaling our $13 billion business to $20 billion and beyond, while growing in an efficient, cost-effective manner that can provide a differentiated buying experience for our customers. We have 2 distribution centers totaling 1 million square feet, one here in Vernon Hills, Illinois, the other in North Las Vegas. My team of 150 coworkers in procurement is part of a larger product and partner management team of 350 coworkers that manages over 1,200 active suppliers. It is our job as well to understand, as the collective PPM group, as we call it, to understand the product and services portfolio for our top suppliers to ensure we have the latest and greatest technology offering and solutions for our customers. My procurement team manages an average of $240 million to $270 million of inventory, with an average of 30 inventory turns per year, supporting our $13 billion IT solutions sales engine. In our business, we cannot afford to have stale and aged inventory, as product life cycles in the IT industry are generally 6 months to a year as we stretch it. My team places 8,000 to 10,000 purchase orders per day. 50% of our business actually ships from our distribution centers, and the other half ships directly from our suppliers to our end users. Of our 1,200 active suppliers, 95% of our business is conducted with our top 100. We support a sales engine of 2,500 plus account managers, 800 plus technical specialists, 600 plus service delivery engineers, 500 plus certified engineers and project managers, along with 300 plus specialized solution architects. With that, John, I'll kick it back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so we are going to move into our discussion now. And again, just a reminder that you can submit a question at any time. Just look for that question field to the left of the slide window. All right, so let's begin talking about modernizing the supply chain. So why not start with the big question? And Scotty, let's start with you. So how do you go about modernizing your supply chain?
Thanks, John. So assessing where you are today is really the first step, and meaning what are the tools, processes, people, and business relationships that the organization has in the present state. And then decide where you need to be in the next 1, 2, and 3 years in terms of driving real value to the business. Supply chains can and should be significant contributors to bottom line profits as well as cash generation. So once you have a vision and you've articulated that to your supply chain organization and the business, the rest is up to your team. And the entire organization has to be brought in or bought in. They have to be unified in purpose, and you have to manage the path forward like you would any project with deadlines, milestones, regular status checks. A critical element to this is that there has to be top-down support and drive for change must be present to succeed. Without that, and without the team buy-in, it'll be very difficult to go down that process.
Okay, great. Byron, what do you say?
Yeah, I think Scotty hit a lot of good points there, so that I'm not being duplicative. I would say in addition to that is, again, the number one priority to what Scotty said is just to align with the core mission of the organization, and then making sure that we're supporting the goals of the organization on top of that. That landscape in the IT industry, as an example, continues to evolve from basic fulfillment of products and services in North America 15 years ago to global delivery of complex solutions, including data center assessments and on-site installations, to application delivery via the cloud. So not only do we need to support the goal and mission today, but looking out that 3 to 5 years is also important, because this stuff just doesn't happen overnight, especially at the size and scale that we operate. Then at that point, then it's all about driving depth and breadth related to relationships with our partners and suppliers. Operationalizing partner data to drive operational efficiencies, so you can really focus on the areas that you want to grow and have the systems handle a lot of the volume and low complexity of the business. On the topics of business analytics, analyzing customer partner data to understand trends in the industry is also key to make sure that once you set a path, is that path the right path, and being able to course correct as you move forward is also key. Aligning with our current partner community and onboarding future business partners to ensure we fill gaps within our solutions portfolio and that we execute to mutual growth plans will also be key to future business growth. And then finally, ensuring that we are doing our part in providing a secure supply chain for our customers and partners will also be another key driver and enabler of our future success.
Okay, great. All right, so this is how you go about modernizing your supply chain. But Scotty, what are some of the critical skill sets that are required once you have this kind of modern supply chain structure?
Yeah, that's a good question. So today's demands on the supply chain are significantly more complex and much more demanding, and require strong business acumen by the organization. Just simply, we cannot rely on 20 years of supply chain experience to push us forward where we need to be. A truly modern supply chain organization includes supply chain professionals, engineering leaders, program management, finance, and manufacturing professionals. We also have to provide opportunities for our future leaders to gain experience outside of supply chain. I believe tomorrow's leaders of supply chain will likely come from other diverse organizations as part of the broader business. So a big part of this is talent development. It's absolutely critical. And we have to provide the ability for our high potentials to rotate into other jobs in your organization or outside your organization, which will allow skill set development that will set the stage for the future success. Our expectations of our critical talent are changing way beyond supply chain knowledge. We have to provide the opportunities and path for our future talent to get that experience.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I would also just observe that, this is something that we see federal agencies dealing with as well, as they're looking to kind of fill some talent gaps. One thing they're discovering is it really helps to give people exposure to different kinds of jobs, to develop different skill sets. So it sounds like there's a lot of common ground there. So yeah, so let's talk now about the secure supply chain. This is a really important issue, especially here in the federal space or in any government space. So Byron, Leah, let's start with you. What is a secure supply chain, and how's that different from a regular supply chain?
Yeah, John, thanks for the question. And simplistically speaking, and from a high level, regular supply chain, you have people on your team in the procurement organization that are focused on procuring the right products at the right time at the lowest available cost. Those can be tied to contract, or those can be open market purchases as well. But as you move into secure supply chain, it moves from the simplistic approach of just trying to get the right product at the right place at the right time, while adding on a renewed focus on just protecting the integrity of the product as intended by the manufacturers all throughout the supply chain, not just when it's within our possession, but protecting the integrity and also protecting the data wrapped around those transactions is also very important.
Okay, very good. All right, so I think I know the answer to this question, but Byron, what do you see as kind of the market drivers that are really kind of put an increased focus on the secure supply chain? Sorry, easy for me to say.
Yeah, thanks for tossing the softball up in the air for me on this one. I think all we have to do, any of us, is just to watch, listen to the news, read a newspaper, and you'll see or hear the ever-present threats and stories about cyber attacks and their ever-increasing sophistication from the attackers, causing customer data to be exposed and stolen. There's a potential for counterfeit products to be introduced into the supply chain, which could have malware or backdoors created to penetrate through security software layers. The one item that we're really focused on at this point, the federal government's actually created a joint task force with the National Institute for Standards and Technology, also referred to as NIST, and partnering with the Department of Defense, the intelligence community, and the Committee on National Security Systems to create standards and guidance on how all of us in the supply chain world should be working to secure our supply chains.
Right, and I think I've been in this community, this market for a long time, and I will say it seems like just as the focus on secure supply chain has increased, but we're also dealing with much more complex solutions, and so the supply chain is both getting more complex and the security concerns are heightened. So it's a really interesting time. But let's talk about kind of how this all fits into an organization's business. So Scotty, could you discuss your procurement structure and its value to the overall business performance?
Sure, thank you. So this is the one area where we've really made some significant change and what I believe to be the key contributor to our future success. What we did is we took an organization that had artificial walls built over decades that were focused on individual business units and restructured it to commodities that would align ourselves to capitalize on the breadth of the organization by creating these commodity teams that were focused on gaining leverage across the business enterprise and leveraging the technical knowledge of our buyers to gain the most advantage we could. We've also organized our complex procurements under individuals that have 25-plus years experience in running business and engineering organizations that provide a different perspective to our subcontracting teams. It's business first and supply chain second for us. The most significant structural change we made was to create an organization that was side by side with business development and marketing to really drive competitiveness into our supply chain and enable the business to meet or exceed new business commitments. We're right there at the table, right in the early stages of technology and business relationship development. Huge change and very, very important to the success, not only of supply chain, but the organization. We're much more engaged in the early stages of new business development than we've ever been.
Okay, great. Well, could you talk about what are some of the kind of critical metrics to help you manage your supply chain efforts?
Sure. So supply chain measurements or metrics such as inventory turns, which Byron mentioned earlier, cycle times, on-time delivery, supplier risk, warranty claims, requisition cycle time, those are all used to track supply chain performance. Commonly used metrics can help you understand how your company is operating over a given period of time. Supply chain measurements can cover a lot of different areas, including procurement or production or distribution, warehousing, inventory, transportation, customer service, any area in the supply chain domain. But a good performance in one part of supply chain is not necessarily sufficient because your supply chain is only strong as its weakest link, so to speak. So the solution is to start focusing on key metrics in each area. Tracking your metrics allows you to manage your performance over time, guides you on how to optimize your supply chain. It allows management to identify problems, allows for comparison to other companies through benchmarking, etc. Certain metrics like inventory turns, they have a pretty widely accepted definition. There's other metrics like on-time delivery, dock-to-stock, others that may need to be customized for your particular industry, so you got to pay attention to that. Measurements alone are not a solution to your weak areas. You know, the solution really lies in the corrective actions you take to improve and make the change based on that. The solution comes from a process or system improvements internally or externally, and the measurement should track the results of your improvement efforts. Supply chain performance measurement should have an owner. You have a person or a department that's responsible for achieving an agreed upon target on the metric that you're measuring. Obviously, supply chain management needs to encourage and support the process and the changes that are needed to get to the desired targets. You know, if you've got the correct set of metrics for your business, it'll lead you to realize if you have the proper balance between service you're providing and the cost of that service. How do you you got to ask, how do you optimize your supply chain performance? How can metrics lead to an improvement in logistics management in your supply chain? How do you calculate inventory turns? All these things need to be looked at in terms of process performance improvement.
Okay, great. Byron, I'd like to toss this to you. What do you say? What are some critical metrics that kind of help manage your supply chain efforts?
Yeah, thanks, John. I think Scotty covered a pretty holistic view of those, and I would say he's spot on with it's not just measuring procurement, it's not just measuring the sourcing team, but it is a dashboard, and I think scorecards that are created that actually give you the holistic view of what's happening in the supply chain, because just measuring the supply chain doesn't measure the customer buying experience, right? So I think when you're putting together these metrics, I think it's imperative based on the mission is from a business perspective to make sure that you can tie your end user customer experience back to supply chain metrics. Because when you can connect the dots, and it's tough at times, but when you can connect those dots, then you're going to drive a consistent experience from a customer perspective, and you're solving their needs. The only few things that I would add to what Scotty put together was when you're measuring the various things around the supply chain, it's also good to make sure you're looking and accounting for certifications that are required, right? Because you can be measuring performance-based metrics, but if you don't have the right certifications, you may not qualify in the select contract world. And not to be forgotten in the end here, I think Scotty lives this in his sleep from driving a competitive cost structure. That's what every procurement organization is about. But I think Scotty made a key point before, which it's all about the business first and supply chain second. And I think that's really when you're looking at modernizing the supply chain and you come into critical metrics, it's really about focusing on the business and how do you drive and support the business with where your expertise is, right? So that otherwise, Scotty did a great job. I'll send it back to you, John.
Okay, great. All right, well, Byron, a question for you. As an IT solution provider, what should you and members of this audience be doing to ensure that they're not going to be left behind on the topic of the secure supply chain?
Yeah, I would, on this one, from Scotty's perspective, he probably lives this in his sleep, and where he sits, it's very mature from where the journey they've gone down. But for people who are early in that journey or midway down the path in that journey, there's a lot of information available via the web at your fingertips on this topic, and it's a good idea to make sure that you identify 1 to 2 people in your organization that are focusing on it. Because I believe there's, with all the subtopics wrapped around it and resources and guidance that's out there, it's up to you to assess which ones apply to your business model. And then based on the size and scale of your business model, it's really, in the end, doing a risk assessment. What do you need to do to make sure you're keeping up with the pace of change related to secure supply chain? From a CDWG perspective, what we're doing is closely monitoring Defense Federal Acquisition Regulations and NIST, the special publications that they've been coming out with, specifically in the 800 and 1800 series range, to ensure that we're actually complying where and when it makes sense for our business. We're also aligned with the Coalition for Government Procurement. There's an opportunity to review, assess, and obtain the proper ISO certifications related to your business, and there's other certifying bodies that are recognized around the globe as well too. We have 9001 and 14001, but we're in the process of assessing and where it makes sense implementing the supply chain data and services ISO certifications, which are 28001, 27001, and 20001. And there are really three high-level elements to focus on that we've started out, and I'm sure depending on, again, your business model, you may have a different starting point. But the three areas that we've focused on are, do you have a trusted supplier network, physical security wrapped around facilities, grounds as well, and you may have multiple facilities in multiple parts of the globe. And then the last piece of that is data security. Is your data secure, and can you protect your customer data? Back to you, John.
All right, great. All right, well, let's talk about supplier success. So, Scotty, question for you. How should a modern supply chain be measuring supplier success?
So thanks for the question. I think supplier success oftentimes becomes one of the eye of the beholder kind of things. Everybody has a view of supplier success based on their needs and expectations. So I think it's critical that we take this out of the equation when evaluating supplier success. We have to define and clearly articulate how we're going to measure our suppliers, both for them and for the business that you're supporting. The more critical question surrounds performance and delivery, I think. And so once you define what it means for your supply base to be successful based on expected technical performance, quality measures, delivery performance, aftermarket support, services, you have to then measure that for them and provide them feedback. This is like a rewards and punishment type of system based on performance. Business relationships, quality, delivery, technical differentiation to the business, overall business practices, are they predatory or not, those are all critical in evaluating and describing and measuring supplier success for yourself and for them.
Okay, great. All right, Byron, question for you. How do you ensure that you have a trusted supplier network? What goes into that?
Yeah, that has actually quite a few elements into it, and I can share what we're doing in that area. First of all, we actually have submitted a survey out to our top strategic suppliers to assess their readiness and capabilities in this area. Like I said, when you talk about secure supply chain, it's all about people involved and companies involved in the supply chain to protect the integrity of the product and the associated data with the transactions. So understanding where they're at with the elements that we've talked about, I think, is key in working on who we're going to be partnering with moving forward. The other things that we've done recently at this point is documented, and again, we buy from manufacturers direct. We buy through the distribution channel as well, too. So having a documented, authorized distributor list by manufacturer is key to make sure that you're driving compliance and governance around that. We've implemented an unauthorized supplier router. When a supplier comes up that is identified as unauthorized, that goes into a router, and we have people and processes that address those in a timely fashion. We also have business process assurance audits with our manufacturers, which every 3 to 4 years we sit down and we look at all the processes and how we conduct business, and are we in compliance with our expectations contractually, and making the appropriate adjustments as we move forward. And then also our team is the one that actually is the onboarding management team for onboarding new suppliers. Other things we have a director level coworker responsible for partner governance and compliance within our partner and product management team. And we also have an enterprise risk management committee to drive ethics and compliance across our organization.
Okay, great. All right, Scotty, question for you. How critical is supplier relationship management to supply chain modernization? What's the connection there?
Oh, thanks. This is a really, really great question. It's absolutely critical. The supply base really thrives on their relationship with your buying teams and your business teams. So there's some things to consider. First is demonstrate to your suppliers that you're a good customer. Remember that both you and the supplier have a business to run, so just as you're measuring their performance, they're likely going to be measuring yours. There's a couple important steps you can take to prove you're a good customer and in respect for them. First is to always pay your bills on time. Figure out early what the payment terms are as soon as you place the order and abide by those. If you can't make the payment, you got to talk to the supplier and let them know when they can expect it. Second step you can take is to give your vendors as much lead times as possible, being honest in your projections. Don't ask for them to deliver something 6 months ahead of when you actually need it and then punish them for it if they miss a day. Excuse me. I think a part of this is you could, as part of the relationship management, is reducing your number of vendors. You should consider this. This requires that you spend some time and effort to segment your vendors, meaning where do they fall? In other words, who are your alliance and strategic partners, who's your critical suppliers, and who are your transactional vendors? Now, having too many vendors can be overwhelming. Here at General Dynamics Mission Systems, we're struggling with that. We have well over 5,000 vendors. It becomes unwieldy for you. It becomes inefficient, leads to higher administrative costs, and you lose the close relationships that you need with a few choice vendors. That really allows for both parties to work together to control cost, eliminate, and eliminating troublesome vendors can quickly increase the efficiency of your purchasing administrative staff. If you've got 70% of your procurements as transactional under X number of dollars at a low quantity, low dollar quantity, it can really drive the cost of the organization. Take into account other factors like unreliability and lateness of delivery, higher cost and insularity or unwillingness to communicate. In other words, your business relationship with that company. And then you got to keep communications open. And then, as part of that, probably the simple and most basic rules, perhaps the most important, is invite your suppliers to your strategy meetings. We're oftentimes afraid to do that. Let them tour the office that you're in. Include them in business events and parties. Share information. We're really trying to put a lot of effort into this on our side now. And you want to visit your suppliers' offices. They love having you there. It's all part of having a relationship and managing that relationship. Personalizing the relationship, getting to know one another creates a solid partnership. It's also important to be honest and upfront with your suppliers about your needs so they can perform better and know what areas to improve and to keep you as a customer happy. And then, finally, effective supplier relationship management is the best way to ensure optimal supplier performance and help you meet your business commitments.
Okay, great. All right, I think I want to shift gears here and start taking some questions from the audience. And Byron, looks like the first one is for you. Can you talk a little bit more about the connection between the security of the supply chain and the modernization of it? What's the connection there?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because as you modernize the supply chain, so for us it really comes down to not just visibility with your direct supplier, but it's their suppliers that are supporting them, right? So I believe that as you look at a secure supply chain, if you don't understand where your supplier is sourcing product and their partner profiles that they actually have, what do they do around partnering with people and the rigor that they put into the onboarding process, you could be introducing things into the supply chain that you don't have any control of, but I think that comes down to what Scotty was saying is get to know your suppliers, get to know their processes. And you can't do this, I mean, obviously with 5,000 partners that they have, we have over 1,200. You really have to segment the suppliers out and who are your strategic partners that go into business, you're partnering with and driving your business with. But it's not just enough anymore to understand your own internal systems and governance and compliance methodologies that you have and scorecards. It's what do they have with their suppliers as well too, so that you're looking 2 and 3 tiers into it, so that you're making intentional decisions on who you're going to partner with to protect the integrity of the product and data that's coming your way. Not everybody is along that same path from a maturity perspective. So they may not be connected with the e-commerce or data flowing into them from their suppliers. It may be spreadsheets. It may be just emails, right? Depending on the maturity of the companies that are supporting your supplier. So I think it's important and imperative that you're partnering and you're very close with your strategic suppliers, understanding what their onboarding process, the rigor that they put into vetting out net new suppliers, and what is their process from an accountability standpoint if they find something. Are they communicating with you? So it's really an open book and transparency throughout the supply chain.
Okay, very good. Okay, let's see. Got another question, and I'll put this out there, and one of you, whoever wants to take this up first, please do. So the question is, how can the federal supply chain, with its multiple layers of well-intentioned barriers to procurement, transform into an agile and responsive enterprise capable of providing immediate order fulfillment at best value to the federal customer? Sounds like a tall order, but what do you folks say?
Scott, do you want to take a crack, and then I can jump in?
Sure, I'll take. So it's a very valid point. We're very constrained, and there are a lot of rules and regulations that we have to live under, so it becomes very difficult to be agile and flexible. And in fact, even in my own organization, we've done external surveys of the business that say we're just not keeping up with the speed of business. And so hence, that's really what we're trying to do, though, is to change the organization and change the mindset while maintaining compliance so that we are more agile, so that as we develop these commodity structures, instead of being individually focused and sub-optimized at a business unit level, we're now looking at an enterprise level. It'll require less heads to manage the effort. It'll allow us to get various locations unified in terms of where we're procuring items, how we're procuring items, looking at such things as the front end side of the business development. We're driving that, which is a big, what I consider to be a game changer for us in terms of being more agile and supporting the business in a better way. But we still have to be mindful of compliance. Which again, if you got to organize around your company's enterprise goals, and then execute to those at an enterprise level.
All right, Byron, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a tough challenge, but in the meetings that we have been in with select federal customers, I think a lot of them are looking at this point and trying to drive through the decision of, do we actually buy the product, or are we just going to start leasing the product, right? Is it a subscription model delivered via the cloud, so that as technology changes and advances, does it make sense for them to own and manage that infrastructure that they've done historically, and then be able to adapt, especially when technology is advancing so rapidly and life cycles are so short, in the process that is in place around contracting and going through the modules and putting forth the request to purchase, and how long that process can be, really taking a step back and saying, can we rely on industry and partner with industry to actually support what it is we're trying to get done, and we just rent that as a service, right? So I think the as a service model is a unique tool in the toolbox that the federal government can look at, and how quickly can they adapt or start migrating to that model. I think that can be a game changer at this point as we move forward.
All right, excellent. Okay, got another question from the audience. I don't know if, Byron, you want to take this one first. How important are contingent vendors in the supply chain workflow? That is, folks who can step in the event of a sudden supply disruption.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely imperative. If you don't have a plan B, depending on the product you're talking about, right? I think it comes down to the product profile. Not every product that is out there needs a plan B and a plan C to it, but those vital items that you're building a solution with, should there be a supply constraint or a potential defect that is found, you got to have a plan B for those particular products. So I think having suppliers, again, in your strategic buckets that you can lean on when something happens, like a constrained product or a product shortage, or An act of God happens somewhere where you have a flood or something natural catastrophic, and understanding where those suppliers are on the globe and being able to adapt and react in a timely manner, I think, is imperative as we move forward.
Okay, good. Scotty, what do you say? Contingent vendors, how important are they?
So I'm a huge fan of competition. Competition is good, and it drives costs down. It causes your vendors to be aggressive, and it provides you options. Having yourself in a position of a sole source or a single vendor really puts your business and supply chain at risk. So for me, I drive for competition in all of our major procurements here. And in fact, any type of a sole source position would require my approval prior to the business executing that. That's kind of how I answer that.
All right. All right, Scotty, let's stay with you. Got a question for you. So how does your company identify the right partners? How do you do that?
So I guess I'd answer it this way. Business strategy involves leveraging the core competencies of the organization. And it's that way to define it, and defining a high-level goal or objective. It also includes the analytic and decision-making process surrounding what to offer, whether it's a product or service, when or how to offer it, timing, business cycles, and where to offer it. And all of that comes together as a competitive plan for your company. So while business strategy constitutes the overall direction of an organization, the supply chain strategy constitutes the actual operations of that organization. And to the extent the supply chain can meet specific supply chain objectives. Most companies have a business strategy. I guess there's some that may not, but pretty well understood that it's required, so the organization knows which direction it's going to go. But a lot of companies are unlikely to have an overtly designed supply chain strategy. So I think that becomes critical. And why is that so important? Well, one good reason is to operationalize and support your business strategy. At some point, a business strategy has to be executed. Typically, this is done through the operational components of a company, whether that be supply chain, manufacturing, engineering, finance, etc. Supply chain strategy and partner selection focuses on driving down operational costs and usually maximizing efficiencies. So, for example, an organization may choose a strategy directed at supplier management as a way to remain competitive. So by providing a clear purpose, the organization keeps sight of that strategy and then is able to devise tactical steps to achieve these goals. Another reason for having a supply chain partner strategy is to establish how you work with your supply chain partners, including suppliers, distributors, customers, and even your customers' customers. Looking outside in is absolutely critical to that. And as the marketplace becomes more competitive, which it is today, it's hyper, at least in our market, it's hyper-competitive. It's critical to reinforce existing relationships and working together with them. And for all those reasons, a well-executed supply chain strategy results in value creation for the organization as well as your partners.
All right, very good. Got a question here from the audience that actually kind of seems like a follow-up, although it was submitted before you started talking. When communicating with a potential new supplier, what is the first question you ask them? And what is the most important question you ask them if it's not the same? Who wants to grab that one? First question you'd ask a potential new supplier. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Byron. I can take that to start out with. And the first thing that when we're reached out to is what the supplier is offering. Is it relevant to our core mission and to our business, right? So if it's relevant, and then right after that one, it comes down to, especially in the industry where we're at from an IT perspective, how many other players do I have in that particular category or that offering, and do I have redundancy, and at what point is there saturation? So when we're assessing actually new partners, they bring out new products. Number one, is it a gap in our portfolio and our offering? But number two, do I have enough coverage in that particular offering that adding a third or fourth just provides saturation and confusion for our customers? So it's really a gap assessment and a fit, number one, and the quality of that. Is there a differentiator in what they're providing? Is there a gap or a differentiator that we're just not covering where we should sit down and actually consider it?
Okay, great. Scotty, did you have anything you wanted to add, or are you good?
No, I think you hit it right on the head. You know, once you've been into a conversation, my assumption at that point is that potential vendor has a product solution, technical offering that is valuable to the business, or a customer relationship that is valuable. I think the other aspect to me that's important is understanding how this company is going to handle its business relationship with you, its partner, because I think that's critical. And oftentimes supply chains, as part of our supplier quality ratings or whatever, we don't measure that. And so I think that's an important aspect that you have to understand early on.
All right, very good. Got a question here. Byron, I think earlier you had mentioned kind of the whole as-a-service approach. And so this person asked, you know, we're seeing this emerging direction from the federal customer of doing as-a-service model. What are kind of the new challenges that this model presents, and how are you addressing them?
Yeah, the first and foremost is just education, right? Is what is it? Because we historically in the supply chain have had tangible items that we're buying, having them shipped to us, we receive them, they're tangible. When you start talking services, there are quite a few challenges, especially when you have an infrastructure built on tangible goods. First and foremost is, how do we handle that financially? And do we have the capability to be able to work that into our current financial operating model, so that when whether we have, on the federal government side, it's a little different. I deal in the commercial world as well too. When you have public companies, there's something about their history that investors like to track, and that actually can create problems unless it's clearly noted in public earnings releases. From a federal government standpoint, though, and looking back at customers migrating and agencies migrating to that model, I think there are just many years of a way of doing business, and thought leadership, change management, and pushing down from the top and understanding the benefits, because I think it comes back from an education and awareness standpoint. You really got to sit down and walk through the benefits and how it's going to benefit them, and how does that benefit them at the budget level. Because if you can't get to the budget level and how it's going to benefit them, then it's going to be a much slower migration at that point. But once you sit down with the right people, and that's where I think this is definitely one, as Scotty said earlier, this has to be a top-down approach, right? You have to get with the right people and walk through the math and the finances and how that's going to impact them. And then if there's benefit there, I think it'll be pretty straightforward on, okay, make the decision to move there. But then you have change management with everybody else that's been supporting this age-old, historic, many years of processes and systems that have been built to track the tangible goods that they used to buy. How do we migrate that, and what's the time frame and the cadence wrapped around that? And that a lot goes to change management, project management, and a lot of conversations. So first and foremost, I'll just go back to, it's education and awareness and understanding the benefit. That's where you got to get first before you're going to get any shift.
All right, very good. Scotty, did you have any thoughts on as-a-service?
You know, Byron's right. I think the challenge, at least from our world, is our customers like to own things, and you know, whether it's software as a service, system as a service, whatever it might be, it tends to come with licensing. It comes with support that they're not used to. So I think it's just a change in the mindset from our customers that will take time. I'm not sure they're prepared for it yet,
right,
from my view, but I think it's coming.
All right, very good. Let's see, I don't know if either of you are in a position to answer this, but let me just put it out there. What should we be looking for in a vendor as it relates to emergency management? for example, when a flood or catastrophe happens, how can we ensure that our products will be delivered in a timely fashion? Do either of you have any thoughts on that? I realize that's kind of a specific area.
This is Scotty. I'm going to have to apologize, John. I'm not sure I have a good understanding.
Yeah, like I said, this is a very specific area. Okay. All right,
we have,
good.
John, I could answer that part. We actually had partnered with FEMA a couple of years ago, and there's a contract out, especially when you get to hurricane season. And if it's a seasonal event, so when you talk about these emergencies, depending on what products and services you're talking about, if there is a seasonality to these events, then you can plan and partner, right? The issue comes out when it's not seasonal and it's not planned. Then it comes down to understanding who your broad offering portfolio suppliers are and who will have access to inventory. So to me, it comes back to understanding your supplier base, understanding inventories that are held, but it's really understanding, depending on which agencies are located where, when there's an emergency, what type of emergencies, what's that profile when you assess emergency planning, and what are the top 2 or 3 that you should prioritize so that you're ready for if you're partnering with one of these agencies in an area where this could happen, right?
Right. Okay, very good. All right, thank you for that. Let's see. So Byron, earlier you talked about, the idea of a trusted supplier network. I was wondering, could you talk a little bit more about that? Specifically, what's the focus here when it comes to physical security? That's something else that has come up.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. So we have 2 distribution centers as an example. And so what's the focus around making sure that you understand who is coming onto your property and grounds, right? So if you have trucks coming in and waiting to be unloaded, are they in a gated, guarded yard? Or are they just sitting out in line for everybody to understand what they're carrying, and you have a big sign out front as to who you are, and you're just putting a billboard out there as far as what you're waiting to be unloaded, right? So part of it is looking at the grounds around your facilities. Are they secure? The other piece is the buildings and the facilities that you actually have. How are you securing them, and how many access points do you have, and how easy is it to get in your facilities? Do you have credentialing from an ID perspective at that point? If somebody doesn't have the correct ID, what's the procedure for them to actually get access to your facility? Some buildings can be loose. If you're sharing a floor in a corporate office, how secure is it for somebody to get off in an elevator onto your floor, right? So a lot of that is building access, ground access and security. And there's many things that go into that from a control and span. We actually have 40 people in the security team that actually monitors closed-circuit TVs 24/7. But we also have documented security protocols, documented training programs, security processes, and procedure audits, right, wrapped around that. In order to get into our facilities or out, you go through metal detectors. So there's a lot of things, again, based on size, based on the facility makeup. Again, it comes back to risk profile. Are you guarding your security? Are you guarding the access points to make sure that people who are in your facility should be in your facility, and do you know where they're at once they're in there? So there's a lot of, again, based on size, number of facilities, it can get to be a pretty complex thing if they're not standardized in each facility.
All right, very good. All right, we got time for one more question. I think, Scotty, we got one for you. Do you consider your supply chain a differentiator in early engagement? What do you say?
Yeah, absolutely. This was, again, one of the key aspects when we looked at ourselves organizationally and how we were facing the business. It all starts up front when you're attempting to win over a client and win new business. And early on, the organization, when I first came in, we really didn't have a seat at that table. And business was doing a lot of the hard work themselves in terms of trying to figure out how to get costs out of the supply chain, how do they work with vendors, et cetera. So I brought in some significant talent in that area to face the business. And so we have a team in place now that's very engaged with all of the front-end business development directors and their teams. And as we go through the capture process and the execution of that process, my team is very engaged. And they've become a real differentiator in terms of supporting the business with supply chain strategies, vendor selections, quality improvements in our vendor selection, all those things. So I feel really good about it. I think that I think it's important for any supply chain to be engaged early in the process. And honestly, it's one of the things that as over the last 3 years, as I've had a chance to network with my peers, et cetera, it's a very frustrating aspect of all of their businesses is how early is supply chain engaged, because they can be a huge differentiator. Most of our programs are 60 to 70% of supply chain content. So you can see how well we do in terms of being competitive and driving the strategies has a big impact on our ability to win business.
All right, very good. Well, we are out of time. I would like to thank Scotty Miller and Byron Holden for a very informative session. I also want to thank CDWG for their sponsorship of this webcast. And I want to remind everyone that in the next day or two, we'll be emailing you a link to an archived version of the session so that you can review it or pass it along to a colleague. Thank you all very much for attending, and this concludes today's webcast.